I think that's actually a perfect segue for this week's Rearview, presented by BF Goodrich, because we're going to watch Ethan Ewing take on Owen Wright at last month's Tweed Coast Pro in Cabarita. And I think this is just a great kind of breakdown of the Australian title contenders right now, Bugs.
Oh, it really is, Dave. I mean, this Australian Grand Slam series was awesome because, you've got guys, like Owen's now a super established, he's part of the establishment. And then against the young Ethan Ewing is, one of the young guns coming through in Australian surfing. And, Owen's in, you can see, like, he's still surfing absolutely fantastic. The break hasn't done him any harm whatsoever. And, the whole Wright family, gosh, it's just an incredible surfing family.
It's such a fascinating thing. I talked to Pat O'Connell about this. Pat says hi, by the way. He was super bummed I wouldn't let him join us for this.
Oh.
But we talk about this all the time. And it's this weird cycle that happens kind of in regions sometimes. The Australian women have been so dominant in recent years, for many years, I guess, between Steph and Tyler. And then the Australian men haven't actually won a world title since Mick Fanning in 2013. Yeah. And Mick was, I think, runner-up 2014, 2015, came really close in 2015, a crazy year with the shark attack and everything else that happened. Yeah. And then Julian's been there a couple of years, but not super close. But it just has been, it's been a huge breath, really, in terms of an exhale for Australia. And I wonder if you had any insights on that.
Well, I do. Look, things are happening generational, and I think it's more difficult to come off to be one off. Julian's kind of been our one off guy that's been in contention. He's been thereabouts. Mathematically in contention going into pipe, but that's about the closest we've come. Whereas the Brazilian Storm, meanwhile, is coming through in numbers. And you've got the big three there, with Italo, Felipe Toledo, and Gabriel Medina, the big three. But look at the layer just below them. It's absolutely amazing. So that shift has really gone to Brazil with then John Florence, being just the two-time world champion, and last year came off to an incredible start. Would have been right there for the world title if he hadn't been injured. So, and Australia's just taken a back seat. But now we do have this new generation coming through, like Ethan, for example. He came through really young. He sort of cut through it like butter. And then he started out, he was getting these 9-point rods. He showed flashes of how good he was, right. but he didn't get a backup wave. And then he got himself in that, that seeding hole you get in when you don't get those early results. And he was coming up against world title contenders, and he just didn't have the maturity, It's not like he didn't surf like a kid, but he just didn't have that maturity to kind of sustain his position. But now he's back. Whereas Owen has been just a mainstay, and thereabouts also. Owen's been sort of, you'd have to say probably sitting comfortably in that 5 to 10 range for a few years, but always looking like he could shoot up and be in that. Because I do believe, Dave, that no matter what generation it is, no matter what you're only competing against 4 or 5 guys for the world title ever.
Right.
That's it. It's a 4 or 5 man competition. And Owen's always just knocking on the door into that 5, and has been there.
And if you look at Owen and Julian even recently, they're surfing pretty much at career form. I've never seen him surf as sharp or as fast or as aggressive, really in all conditions. But then you look at someone like Ethan, and Ethan particularly at this event, and someone like Jack Robinson, who I think's put in a ton of work in sort of slower and conditions. Do you think that the window for Julian and Owen is maybe closing on title hunting, and that they may get they might be looking in their rear view a little bit at someone like Jack or someone like Ethan?
Well, look, I think that's part of the cruelty of the COVID year. I do that. Guys that are getting, sort of their late 20s, early 30s are kind of losing a very important year for them to have another burst. Right. Just like Sean and I had a burst when we were 30. Tommy Carroll, all the greats have still had another burst in them, whereas there is a crew coming through. And the top, 32, coming into 2020 was absolutely amazing. I mean, it was just top to bottom. I just go through it with my kids and just go look and go, it's so amazing how good the quality of the field is, and I think that this year, looking, I think you're right in one respect. There is this young crew coming through, and led by Ethan and Jack, and I think this year they're all going to have a pretty good crack. There's certain events. I mean, I think Ethan is ready now. I think he's got that maturity to, and that, that heat management sort of maturity to put together performances after performances after performances, like he did in Cabba, and it was a building performance all the way through to, in the dominating the final. And Jack, of course, is going to be dangerous, and there's quite a few events where he could well and truly be well in contention for, and whether he's mature enough to put a world title campaign together, that's the big question, because, we've seen Geordie and come very close and not quite have the full campaign, but always showing flashes that this guy could be world champion in any given year. You don't know until you see it, how it pans out over a campaign. But I think that at the end of last year, those two guys in particular were looking to have a bit of a solid dig and maybe make inroads into the Brazilian Storm.
The first event every season is so essential to setting the pace for the year, and for 2 decades essentially it's been Snapper Rocks or the Gold Coast, right? Now it's being flipped on its head, and Pipeline is the opening event. And what kind of impact do you think that's going to have on tone setting in terms of these young Australians on tour?
Yeah, well, that's true. You're absolutely right. I mean, I've always thought the young Aussie guys had to take full advantage of the fact that it was in their home turf to get that, because the seeding, to get yourself into a good seeding position, to at least be in the middle of the seeding pack. As we see Ethan just tearing into this wave, and
I think he serves so much like Andy Irons to me. It's unbelievable.
Oh, look, he's definitely studied Andy Irons. There's no doubt about it. I mean, my son Jagger and I watch it all the time. We just see so much Andy in Ethan, which is so awesome, because, I mean, Andy, is my favourite surfer. I mean, he's just, I just love watching Andy footage. It's just the raw surfer just attacking the waves with incredible confidence. And that's what it is. This is just confidence.
And he's just so, it looks like he's done so much work, like strength and fitness wise, and he had flashes of that first rookie season too.
Well, yeah, he's a naturally strong guy. He's really strong through the midsection, Ethan. He's you check him out, he's strong. But look, he's done an amazing amount of work. I mean, he comes from North Stradbroke Island, and the crew up there are so supportive of him, and it's a fantastic place. I mean, B. Durbidge is home, and there's been some great surfers coming from there. And Ethan, I knew Ethan's mum was a champion surfer.
She won bells, right?
Yeah, she could have won a world title, seriously. But she just was in paradise, But Ethan has done a lot of work over there on his own in all those months when North Stradbroke Island was cut off from the mainland. You weren't allowed to go there for months and months and months. And I'm sure the locals weren't too upset about that.
That's right. Yeah, people. I mean, it's one of those sort of like it's a Superman's Fortress of Solitude in a lot of ways, like. Just train a little bit warmer, but training there. It's funny. I took the family on a road trip from Melbourne up to Brisbane 2 summers ago, and we camped out at North Stradbroke Island.
What a place.
I've been there before, but oh my God, it's so nice. The one thing that we were shocked about was the curlew bird. We'd never heard of one or seen one.
Oh, yeah.
And they make this god-awful scream in the caravan park at night, and they're about this big. And they've got these funny colors, and in pitch black, they just look like a little alien, like chupacabra, like screaming in the fuzzy darkness.
Yeah, well, but in Australia, it's the quiet ones you got to worry about. But Dave, the other thing about Ethan, there's a lot of sea life on up there in North Australia. I mean, a lot of sea life, right? And
sure, yeah.
I remember we were up there one day. I was up there with my kids and a bunch of other kids, and we got buzzed by a shark, and we came in, and Ethan came trotting down for a surf, and my son said, "Look, there's a shark out there," and I said to Ethan, like, "How do you, what's your attitude? Like, what's your approach? There's You see him all, and he just went, I don't look. just surf on.
I mean, I've asked so many people on this podcast basically that same question, and they're all the same. They're like, no, I don't think about it. And I'm like, how could you not? Like, how could you not think about it?
I don't know if you saw that footage of Matt Wilkinson recently.
I did.
I mean, that is just as gnarly as it gets. I mean, that was only like a little 6-footer, and that thing was just, he didn't even see it, But that's why, just on that subject, that's why I'm such a supporter with the whole shark mitigation of the drone technology and using, getting all the minds together, to really, utilise the technologies we've got at hand that we haven't really brought into play yet. But that drone technology, with sensors, would surely be a massive tool, because with all the protection and all the more thousands more whales, there's just more predators. There's more apex predators, and we've got to protect humans too.
I love that, because I also think like just consolidating all the knowledge and thinking and the iterative facts, like what you know about them. Because I mean, as a surfer, I'm fascinated by the thing out in the water that can eat me, right? It feels like the academic theory on them changes every so often. Like people used to think they're territorial, and now they know they're migratory. And people used to think they would only hunt, at night. Now it's It is one of those things. I think you're right. Like supporting, academics and supporting science and supporting the technology and learning as much as you can. It can only lead to just a better understanding.
Well, that's right, and it is, and plus understanding the different species, the different behaviours of the species. Like the bull shark is different to the tiger shark, is different to the great white, and you got to understand their behavioural patterns, and then the whole shark mitigation's got to be based on that understanding and knowledge, then combined with all the technologies we've got at hand, and really putting our minds to protecting both humans and sharks.
Yep, absolutely. But it's one of those things that we saw. I think young Jack Robinson was getting ready for his heat a few moments ago on camera. It's the same thing. I remember going to Western Australia and being scared out of my mind pretty much the whole time I surfed there. And then there's just little kids paddling out in the dark, no problem. And I'm like, how do you? It is something where it's I guess you're a product of your environment.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that is their habitat. But having said that, I mean, there's villages in India that are built on tiger habitat. That is the tiger's natural habitat, and they've done mitigation there where tigers still aren't allowed to come down the main street and pluck a human for lunch. So we've still got to protect, and then still have understanding and protection of both sharks and bycatch and all that sort of thing, and all the creatures of the ocean. But we can't just fish the ocean out and think that and have nothing left for the sharks to eat either.
Yeah, without repercussions. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, man. It's a big picture, and I mean, there's something that I definitely want to. I study, and I want to kind of tackle this.
We've spent a little bit of time talking about, the perennial title contenders like Owen, Wright, and Julian Wilson, and sort of the young bucks that have been really, really impressive, like Jack Robinson and Ethan Ewing. But one of the things I noticed across the board, we should include Mikey Wright in there as well, since he won Stradbroke and an amazing surfer. But it feels like everyone has used this off year pretty smartly in Australia, at least. Like you look at someone like a Connor O'Leary or a Wade Carmichael or a Sally Fitzgibbons, Isabella Nicol, they all look stronger, they all look sharper, and they just look like they're surfing better than ever.
Well, the one thing that's worked over here is that the surf industry, surf shops and surfboards, because everyone's surfing. So everyone's just gone surfing for the last 6 months, and we've been allowed to. We've been fortunate, Dave, that we haven't, had to be, apart from some parts of Victoria, we haven't been in hard lockdown. So we've been a little bit fortunate, I think, by our geographic isolation. But as I said, my son and I, we watch footage from all over. We saw some footage of Griffin Colapinto. He looks unbelievably, there's so many great young surfers. Kaloho, we saw some footage of him. And it's just amazing. John looks like he's in, great surfing. Italo looks ridiculous, as far as he looks like he's in, he's going to be like just a monster, like, so it's just awesome. I mean, I can't wait for the World Surf League to, I know there's incredible challenges out there, but somehow it's got to happen. There's just the talent is just too great. We want to see it,
I'm totally with you. And Italo, I mean, he's our reigning world champ. He is someone who, when he qualified a few years ago, and it's my job to know about these things. Like, I remember being like, oh yeah, I remember I've seen a few things, not really familiar. Like, we were kind of in sort of Gabriel was kind of the focal point. Felipe were the focal points out of Brazil.
Yep.
And I remember I was coming out of the water at Rocky Lefts, and I saw Italo surfing, and he was still riding for Oakley, and he just looked really good, like huge airs, like really sharp. And I'm like, wow, this guy's really cool. He's got this really sort of like equitable style or equitable weight on both his front and back foot in a lot of ways. And it's really unique, but he's someone that really came almost out of nowhere on the global stage to within a few years, he's the world champ.
Well, we were watching him at a World Junior. It was a World Junior in Portugal. Mm-hmm. And my son Jagger said, look at this kid. He's got this unbelievable little stocky, low center of gravity power style. And I went, he looks pretty good. And next minute, 2 years later, he'd won 3 events. He didn't win the world title, but he won 3 CT events. And now look at him, he's unbelievable. And geez, he can handle the pressure. He surfs his free surf though with incredible intensity. He surfs his free surfs with intensity. I remember watching a few sessions with Carissa Moore and Carissa also, she really surfs her free surfs with a lot of intensity, and I went, that's such a key, it's just that athlete. It's like nearly like the gymnast, where you've got to really be at that 95% level all the time to even stay where you are, let alone progress. And you can just see that in Italo,
Yeah, and it goes back almost to kind of the opening story in a lot of ways too, because this is another theme of this year really for me, is that without the championship tour, and it's hard for me to say this without sounding like a WSL apologist, I promise I'm not, but it's like without the WSL championship tour, the engine within surfing has kind of been shut off, and that's kind of the thing. It goes back to that, hey, the identity here is this is the home of the world's best surfing. And whether you put a jersey on or not, whether you get paid to free surf or not, it becomes the communal reference point for a lot of people. And it's what provides structure for people, whether they're fans or whether it's the industry or the media or the professional surfers themselves. And that's why I'm like, I just can't wait for this thing to come back on, because as you pointed out, the talent level, at least in my 15 years of doing this, I've never seen a higher concentration of it.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's that aspirational dream. I'm not talking about the dream tour. I'm talking about the dream. And there's so many kids around the world that kids need hope, Dave. They need hope on the other side of this. And surfing provides that dream. And the World Tour with the best surfers in the world are there. They are there. There's no one missing. Yes, there's some hot ones that didn't make it, and there's others that are on the pathway, but they're there. And they're not selling the dream. They're just showcasing the dream. And that is so important for our youth. It's so important that the youth has dreams, even if they know in their heart of hearts they're not going to be on the world tour, but they can still dream and they can still better themselves. And that's why these guys are heroes and girls. They're heroes. They're role models and heroes. And we need them on the world stage.
I couldn't agree more. And it's one of those things too, where it's like, in life, you can do obviously anything you want. You can go in a bunch of different directions. And I often think, like, people, you've been there 15 years, like, what are you still doing there? And I go, it's just the most interesting thing I could imagine, whether I surfed or not, and whether this was surfing or not, right? Is that it's creating conditions to see human, like, transcendence in a lot of ways. And you can't put a price tag on that in terms of being able to work on that kind of thing, And because to me, it gets to what you were talking about, where it's like, it fucking inspires people that you're creating conditions for humans to do things they've never done before in the live arena, right?
and especially when you get the best of the best in that arena, and they push themselves to places out of their comfort zone and into places that they didn't know they could reach. That is so inspirational for everybody. And I was so looking forward to this tour. But anyway, look, like this event at Cabot was fun. The Stratty was really super cool. It was a good showcase of what's going on, and the waves were kick-ass, and it was fun. And we're seeing some bits and pieces, and that it's nice that you guys have just shown that, hey, we're still here. Here's the progressive surfing. Everyone's still really focused and trying to better their surfing and push each other and get ready. And I think that's admirable.
We got Julian Wilson on the screen here, who just separated from his long-term sponsor Hurley right before this event. And Bugs, you obviously worked with Bob Hurley for a number of years and have worked with Julian before. How do you think that kind of separation is going to impact him and impact his surfing moving forward?
Well, in some respects, happening now is probably, there's time to digest it all. I mean, I wasn't even aware of that, but I mean, this is just transitional. I mean, it's just a strange time all around, Dave, and I guess I think Julian's a super strong guy. He's done well. I mean,
he's okay.
I don't think he's hurting too much financially, but obviously, he would be looking for the next adventure, the next collaboration. He'll be moving on.
Well, and I think you just touched on it a little bit too. Like, at the end of the day, the money's nice and the lifestyle's nice and everything else. But the more I've spent time with Julian over the years, the more I'm playing armchair psychologist here, but I just think he wants the title. It's like it, and I even noticed an extra spark in his surfing at this event, almost like he had a chip on his shoulder, which was really fantastic to see, because I think my call on him for the years that he's been doing this is one of, if not the most talented guy in the field. He often surfs in kind of third gear because he can.
Yeah, well, I feel that, these sort of things, these challenges get thrown up, and for an athlete, it's actually good to have a bit of an axe to grind with life. You can get in your comfort zone a bit, and when you've got that, it's a bit of a shock to the system. You've got a bit of an axe to grind. You've got a bit more extra motivation. There's no harm in that as an athlete.
Not at all. You can almost look at the best surfing we've ever seen. The Andy Kelly years, etc. Those were not comfortable years for either of them.
No, that's right. And I even look at other sports, and sports that are multi-million dollar sports, but winning is it just doesn't matter. Winning is just so important, and those rivalries, and that's what really that's the fuel of the whole thing. These wonderful rivalries. The Andy Kelly rivalry was, we built the Dream Tour, they took the Dream Tour to the World Tour, and then that has inspired this generation that's here now. Mm-hmm. And that's how it goes, and that's progression, and I just love seeing progression, and from an individual point of view, it's what makes people tick. Everyone's got their own motivation, and everyone has got their own little axe to grind somewhere, and it can be rivalries. It's often not money. It's driven by this desire to be the best you can be.
Well, and that goes back to the ripple effect or the butterfly effect, right? Where it's you and your colleagues built this, and then others came along and populated it and then inspired, millions of people around the world. And now we're looking at the fruits of that in a lot of ways. And I just go back to kind of that existential point of I guess you can go somewhere and make more money, but you can't do that. You can't have your fingerprints on that, because you're actually moving human beings in a lot of ways.
I think the one thing, that's so true, David. I think the one thing that's going to come out of all this is a real appreciation for our world, for the world, the surfing world. Just a real appreciation. I think that there's going to be places in the world that it's going to be a lot longer before we can go there. And we all worry about what's happening in Indonesia. That's such a playground for us, and it's just. It's just a confusing and warring time. but we've just got to be positive, and how we do that is just through, building hope through this appreciation and just simplifying it down to just going surfing and living your own like level of paradise, and that's what surfing sort of sells in a way. That's what that's why the surfboard industry and everything's doing well through all this, because people can still sort of escape from the reality of the scenario, and just go surfing, just go in the ocean and enjoy paradise.
I think that's right. It's the same over here too. Like every board builder I know is like, we're out. Every wetsuit manufacturer is like, we're out. And it's like, we have all these new people who during this time, even though it's been hard, have kind of remembered, hey, like going outside is kind of nice. Like surfing's really cool. And I look at that as when this machine gets turned back on, it goes back to what you said before. People will watch the best people compete at anything. And if you have the surfing bug after 2020, or if you've been a long-term surfer, your whole life, you still want to watch the world's best, even if you're never going to put a jersey on. I just think that that is the engine that drives kind of everything in our world.
It really is. And, it's that aspirational thing, you've got to, it's whether you have heroes or whether, you just got your mates and, you've just got your little circle of friends. You go down the beach and have surf and have barbies, or, go down to the surf club and have a beer. I mean, it's that lifestyle that we just want the freedom to be able to live our lifestyle. And that's why, that's why we've got to fight for things like democracy and liberty and freedom and just having this wonderful life. I mean, we know through experience now, the whole world with lockdowns and all that it's freedom that is the most important thing. Health and freedom are the two most important things in family. I mean, that's it. We simplified it all again, and then through that comes the total appreciation. And surfing is just one of those beautiful things that, it's a gift. It's just a gift.
Absolutely. So that was the Rearview presented by BF Goodrich. Ethan Ewing not only advanced through that heat, he ended up winning the event alongside Owen's sister Tyler, who looked unstoppable on the Pizels. It was really amazing. The Australian Grand Slam of Surfing wrapped up a couple weeks ago at South Stradbroke with Mikey Wright and Isabella Nichols taking the win there. We got a couple more topics to get to, but first we're going to get one more word in from our sponsors.
Do you like that? Well, if so, subscribe over there and then watch more videos over there. And then tell us your favorite videos down there. It's a 3-step process. Do them all now.